Chapter 1591. Avery heard the gunshot. It was clear that this had something to do with Leia. Bryce was anxious. "Mr. Avery, the Forom family is currently in chaos. If something were to happen to you, what would happen to your brothers? Madame Forom is missing, and Mr. David is injured. Imagine what the rest of your family will be facing if you're not here to take charge of the situation." Gritting his teeth, Avery turned around. "Let's go." Leia had created this opportunity for them at the cost of her own life. But no matter what had happened to Leia, he couldn't afford to stay back. He told himself to walk ahead and not look back. Above all else, rescuing David was what he should do. Before the sky turned bright, Avery brought David back to his own place. He told nobody apart from Olivia about this incident. The moment Olivia heard that both Avery and David had returned home safely, she was relieved. Before she hung up, she asked, "Avery, what happened to Leia?" Avery was stunned for a moment. Then, he replied, "I heard a gunshot when I left. Things were so chaotic that I had no choice but to leave ahead with Dad. I sent a few men to wait for her at the junction. But she never came out even after they waited for a long while. Perhaps she's already." "All right, got it. I'll come over right now." Olivia told Ethan about what Avery said. After a moment of silence, Ethan answered, "Since your dad is safe, her sacrifice wasn't in vain." Seeing his eyes growing red and watery, Olivia could understand how he was feeling at that moment. "After everything Leia has done to me in the past, it's not possible for me to apologize. Even though saying anything to you won't help, I wish I could comfort you. Leia did sacrifice her life to save David, but it was just to repent her own sin. This wasn't the only time she had made a mistake." Ethan pulled Olivia into his arms and hugged her tight. I know that too well. This is a choice that she made. David didn't see her come out. Since she's smart and resourceful, she might not have died." "Yeah, didn't you want to see Dad?" "I'll go with you." Olivia grinned. "I have to tell Grandpa and Uncle Linus about this news. They'll be so happy once they hear this." In the past 2 days, the Forom family had been in chaos. Besides, nobody knew whether David was alive or dead. Not wanting to alarm anyone, Olivia said nothing about this. It was the best time to share the news now. It was daytime in Arlandia, so she wouldn't be disturbing Harold from his sleep. "You should go tell them now." With a gentle gaze, Ethan watched her leave. There was pain in his eyes. He dialed Brent's number and told him what happened. "Dead or alive, you have to bring Leia back home." "Sure. Our men have been standing guard not far away from the scene. They'll certainly bring Miss Miller back home upon your order." Ethan hung up. He watched as the sky gradually turned bright. There were still a few stars in the dark. He sighed heavily. "You dummy. You just wouldn't take the right path, huh?" He didn't understand why Leia was so determined to hurt Olivia. No matter how he tried to force an answer out of her, she wouldn't tell him the truth. He knew that everyone in the Miller family was stubborn. None of them would go this far if they weren't trying to protect someone. She wouldn't tell him the answer even when he threatened to kill her back then. That was why Ethan wanted her to spend the rest of her life in a wheelchair as punishment for her sins. He didn't expect that Leia wouldn't accept her fate. After what happened this time, Ethan finally knew who was the person she cared about so much. It was Avery. A single call from Avery was all it took for Leia to sacrifice her life for him. When Leia had just left the mountain, her body was covered with burn marks. She had suffered so much. It was Avery who brought her back to Peace's embrace to settle down. He taught her everything and gave her a new lease on life. To Leia, perhaps that was the moment Avery became her savior. Chapter 1592. Once Ethan managed to get to the bottom of the situation, the rest of it came together like pieces of a puzzle. It all made sense from there. He just wished that Leia would still be alive to hear the truth. On the other hand, Olivia called Mason. The moment the call was picked up, his powerful voice rang out. "Olivia, it has been such a long time since you last called me. I would have been worried about you if I didn't know that Ethan had followed along." Under her care, it was evident that Mason was recovering better. His voice was strong and vibrant. Olivia was excited to hear her grandfather's voice. "Grandpa, there's something big that I want to tell you. You need to be mentally prepared for this." Mason's tone changed. "Is it a good thing or a bad thing?" "It's good news. I've found my real father." Olivia heard something fall onto the floor from Mason's end. Mason accidentally broke a cup. "Is that true? I should have told you about this earlier, Grandpa. But the situation over here was complicated. Things are finally a little more stable now." Olivia told him everything about what happened. Mason was exhilarated. To him, this was the best news ever. But when he heard that they had managed to find his child who got seriously injured, he was very worried. He wished he could come over right now to check on David. That was his and Natalie's only child, after all. "How's your father's injury, my dear child?" "Grandpa, Avery has just rescued Dad. I'm heading over there right now. I think his injury isn't fatal. Leave everything to me, I'll handle it." Mason felt much better thinking that it was Olivia who had put in all her effort to save David's life. "All right, I have faith in your medical prowess. I'll leave David in your care then." "I understand. I'll inform you if there are any updates." "Okay, you should go and see him now." She could hear Mason's voice choking up. He should be shedding tears of joy. After the call ended, Olivia immediately went to Avery's place. Avery had just opened the door when a woman leapt into his arms before he could even see her properly. At that moment, the Forom family still didn't know about Olivia's true identity. Avery looked confused as well. Although they had accepted Olivia as their godsister a while ago, Olivia had always maintained a distance and a sense of boundary with them. After all, she was not a child anymore. She was a woman. Olivia hugged him so tightly that he couldn't just push her away. He had no choice but to look at Ethan. Ethan was someone who would get jealous easily. All these years, he had been feeling jealous because he thought that Olivia's relationship with Avery was not normal. But right then, he merely stood at the side and watched them coldly. He showed no signs of stopping Olivia at all. Hugging Avery tightly, tears rolled down Olivia's cheeks uncontrollably. She said, "I've finally found you guys, Avery." Her tears dampened Avery's shirt. He patted her back like a gentleman. "Don't cry, I'm safe now." Pulling his phone out, Ethan answered a call. "You've found her. Okay, bring her over here. But Miss Miller is injured. Bring her over after bandaging her wounds, then. It's time for her to know the truth." Ethan hung up. He watched as Olivia and Avery hugged each other. The Forom family should be able to unravel the mystery anytime now. At the same time, it was time for Leia to let go of her grudge. Even if this was a cruel way, he had to reveal the truth to her and shatter all her false perceptions. Chapter 1593. Olivia turned around and glanced at Ethan. Ethan smiled at her. "I have to sort out something. I'll be back soon." Since Olivia was in a hurry to see her father, she wasn't bothered by it. She quickly followed Avery into the room. Troy and Sean were already by David's side. When Olivia entered the room, their eyes were red and watery. They were grateful to have survived the ordeal, but perhaps they regretted whatever they did in the past too. They would have been able to avoid all those sufferings if they had found out about the truth sooner. Olivia's heart was beating rapidly. She finally saw David. He looked younger than how he seemed to be in the photos or videos back then, but much weaker as well. His face was as pale as a sheet. He was the father whom she had been looking for all these years. But when Olivia saw her father at this moment, she was dumbfounded as she stood rooted to the spot. Ever since she knew that Jeff was not her actual father, Olivia had imagined how her real parents and family would be countless times. Would they love her? "Olivia, what's wrong?" Avery's gentle voice pulled her back to reality. "Nothing. Is he Mr. Forom?" The conversation between the two attracted the other's attention. David glanced in her direction. He was stunned the moment he saw her. Although Jacqueline had undergone plastic surgery to look like Olivia, it was impossible for her to look exactly like Olivia. Olivia looked too much like David's mother. It was a shame that his mother passed away many years ago. That was why his children didn't have much memory of their grandmother. But how could he possibly forget about all the times he had spent together with his mother back then? You're... David wanted to get up the moment he saw Olivia. Troy explained to him gently, "She's Dr. Fordham, the one I told you about earlier. We've also accepted her as our godsister. Olivia has helped us out a lot this time. Is your last name Fordham as well?" Olivia walked over to him with tears in her eyes. Perhaps it was because of their father-daughter bond that David felt restless. His heart was beating fast. "Yes, that's my last name too." Olivia's mouth was agape. However, she didn't know where to start. It was such a long story to begin with. "Olivia, you have great medical expertise. Please check my dad's condition now." "Oh, all right." Olivia hurriedly walked over to David. She first checked his pulse to examine his condition. From the moment she appeared, David's eyes had been fixated on her. "She really does look a lot like her," he mumbled. "Dad, what are you talking about? Who does she look like? You guys probably can't remember her anymore." "Well, my mother had aged a lot by the time Avery was born. This young lady looks very much like your grandma. If I wasn't so sure that Shayna and I only have one daughter, I'd even suspect her identity." After Olivia was done checking his pulse, she first explained to them about his condition. Only then did she slowly speak up. "Well then, have you ever suspected that Jacqueline might not actually be your daughter, and perhaps the lady standing in front of you is your long-lost daughter?" Her tone was calm when she said all of that, but her words took everyone aback. Everyone was dumbfounded. They started to wonder if what Olivia said was possible. A woman's hoarse voice rang out from behind them. "No, that's impossible. How could you possibly be the daughter of the Fordham family?" Olivia turned around. She then happened to meet Leia's eyes, which were filled with shock. Chapter 1594. Olivia didn't know about the entanglement between Leia and Avery. Her appearance here took Olivia aback. Although Leia was not dead, Olivia was not disappointed. After all, Leia's identity was different. From Olivia's perspective, Leia would be better off dead. But Ethan would certainly be sad if Leia was dead. That was why Olivia's attitude toward Leia was rather complex now. Leia's appearance added confusion to the messy situation among the Fordham family members. Everyone still hadn't recovered from what Olivia had just said to them. Avery saw Leia at this moment. "Miss Miller, are you all right? Leia probably got injured and was bandaged up." Avery could smell the faint scent of blood. "I'm okay, Mr. Avery." "Dad, she's the one who saved you. If it weren't for Miss Miller who helped us out financially, I would have still been helpless to deal with the situation." All of David's attention was still on Olivia. But since Leia saved him, he had to say something in return. "Thank you, Miss Miller. I'll certainly repay your kindness." Leia seemed restless in front of the Fordham family. She waved him down. "You don't have to." David's eyes then rested on Olivia. "Dr. Fordham, is what you just said true?" After all, they had suspected Deborah and Brandon. But they never had any suspicions toward the woman whom they had been doting on so much all these years. Jacqueline had been putting on such an excellent act in front of them. Shooting a glance at Leia, Ethan strode over. "I'll explain everything to you." He knew that Olivia was still emotionally agitated about this. He first asked Olivia to have a seat. When he walked past Leia, he even lowered his voice and said, "You'd better kneel and listen to this carefully." Leia was anxious. Although she had no idea what happened to the Fordham family back then, she could roughly guess the outcome. That was why she didn't fight back and merely knelt on the floor. Ethan then explained Leia's strange and difficult upbringing to the others, especially the part where she was nearly murdered by someone in the country. He did so in a logical and clear way. Some of the bad things that had happened to Olivia were Leia's doing. Apart from feeling ashamed, she was filled with regret and gratitude too. She was glad that Olivia was still alive and well instead of being dead after everything she did to Olivia. Ethan finished the story about Olivia's life since birth. Out of the blue, he knelt down beside Leia. "Mr. David, Leia and I have done many things to hurt Liv after being instigated by others. The Miller family owes an apology to the Fordham family and Liv. I have no objections even if you want to kill or hurt me." Right after he said that, Sean got up from his wheelchair. With veins bulging on the back of his hand, he sent a punch across Ethan's face. Ethan took his punch head on. Blood trickled down the corner of his lips. You bastard, you nearly killed Olivia. Troy's hand was injured, or he would have hit Ethan too. He glared at Ethan. Did you bully her because she had no family as her backer? I felt bad for her when I heard about her life story back then. I never thought that she was actually my own sister. If my hands were still working, I'd kill you or even turn you to mincemeat. Even Avery's eyes turned cold. If that's the case, I should have brought Olivia along and left early on. You piece of trash. Yes, it's all my fault. Mr. David, you, don't call me that. As David spoke, he tried to get up. My dear daughter. Olivia immediately went to the bedside. Watching David with teary eyes, Olivia choked out the word, Dad. Tears flowed down David's cheeks as he slowly pulled her into his arms. My dear child, you've suffered so much pain all these years. Chapter 1595. Olivia's voice was trembling. Dad, I'm just happy I got to see you guys again when I'm still alive. Olivia, I didn't think that Jacqueline would be so evil. Not only did she repeatedly try to get you killed, but she even destroyed our family. Olivia, you don't blame me for having prejudices against you a while ago, do you? Even though I didn't know your true identity, I had never blamed you for anything. The scene of the family union was touching enough. Only Leia had a look of shock and disbelief on her face. How could this be? No way. She lied to me. How could she have lied to me? Leia's beliefs were instantly shattered. She could no longer hold her composure. Seeing that they were still on their knees, Avery asked them to get up. Miss Miller, are you all right? Leia swatted his hand away as she dropped her knees in front of Olivia. She said, I'm sorry, it's my fault. It's all my fault. She was someone who wasn't scared of death. She didn't even flinch when Ethan cut off the tendons on her limbs. But at this moment, she banged her head against the ground madly. It wasn't to ask for Olivia's forgiveness but to repent her wrongdoing. After just a few times of doing so, her forehead started bleeding profusely. Everyone could hear the sound of her skull knocking hard against the floor each time. Miss Miller, please don't do this. Get up and talk instead. Leia didn't listen to Avery at all. She lunged over and grabbed Olivia's wrist. Blood trickled down her face along with her tears. I'm sorry, Olivia, I only did all those vicious things to you because I was fooled. I don't expect you to forgive me. Kill me, just kill me. She knew that it would be too shameless of her to continue being alive, so her mind was set on death. But Olivia didn't fulfill her wish. She looked down at Leia's face, which was full of regret. You do deserve to be killed. But you saved my dad. You're both my enemy and my savior. She hated Leia so much back then. But when Leia was finally at her disposal, she didn't have the heart to do anything. There were tears in Leia's eyes. I'm sorry for putting you in this position. I know what I should do. Before Olivia could react, Leia had let go of her wrist and dashed toward the balcony. When Olivia realized what Leia was trying to do, she quickly pulled Leia. You need to calm down. Blood had blurred her vision. Leia knew she must look really ugly now. She had imagined countless times how she'd look dazzling and well-dressed in front of the man she loved. But she couldn't care less at this moment. Mr. Avery, I've failed to live up to your expectations. I hurt your sister in the past, and I'm sorry for that. All this time, Jacqueline had used Avery as leverage against Leia, coercing Leia to hurt Olivia again and again in the name of repaying kindness. Leia slapped her own face. I'm so stupid. They clearly look alike. I should have thought about it. I'm an idiot, and it's all my fault. I deserve to be killed. All the children in the Miller family had inherited their mother's psychotic illness. They would act in extreme ways in certain situations. Avery had no choice but to hug Leia tight. Stop it, Leia. He entrapped Leia in his arms. Leia then gradually regained her rationality. She could smell nothing but the fresh and sunny scent of Avery. But it was all tainted by her blood. Frantically, she wiped away the blood stains on him. I'm sorry for dirtying your shirt, Mr. Avery. Chapter 1596. Avery waved her down. It's all right, just calm down. He looked at Ethan. Leia is very agitated now. You should bring her somewhere else to get some rest. It was awkward enough for Ethan to stay in this room because of what he had done. It was as if all the men in the Forom family wished they could kill Ethan right there. The only reason why Ethan was here was to let Leia hear the truth. After all, Leia was extremely stubborn and conservative. She would not believe in anything if she didn't see it with her own eyes. "Mr. David, please rest well. I'll visit you another time." Ethan greeted him politely. To his surprise, David threw a pillow right at him. "Get out." David was so angry that his face was red. He couldn't contain his anger the moment he thought about how his own daughter was bullied by others when she was living out there all alone. Olivia quickly went over to comfort him. "Dad, you shouldn't get agitated. Your body is still weak. Is your name Olivia?" David looked at Olivia carefully. Although she looked a lot like her grandmother, her face still carried some resemblance to both himself and Shayna. "That's right. You're a good child. You've been suffering so much pain all these years. Your stepfather raised you well. It's a shame I won't have a chance to visit him in person anymore. If my dad knew that I managed to find my family, he'd certainly be happy for me." Although Olivia was the youngest one here, she seemed to be the most emotionally stable out of everyone. There was only a moment when she couldn't contain her excitement upon meeting her family. But she had returned to her normal self. "Dad, I'll give you a prescription for now. Take the pills and your body will recover in no time." As she scribbled something down, she asked, "Right, how are you guys planning to deal with Jacqueline?" The question was asked in a nonchalant way. But the truth was that Jacqueline's existence had affected the Forom family greatly. When Jacqueline was still in baby swaddles, someone had swapped her with Olivia. She became the only daughter of the Forom family. Besides, Shayna had lost a lot of blood when she gave birth to the baby. Hence, the baby was showered with love from everyone the moment she was born. Jacqueline was adorable when she was really small. Even now, Avery could still remember how cute she was. But such an adorable girl had eventually turned into a greedy woman without anyone realizing it. It was no wonder that her personality changed when she was about 8 years old. That was probably the time she found out about her true identity. Ignoring the fact that the Forom family treated her so well, she tried to murder her brothers and sisters. Thinking about Quinn's death, Avery's face turned ice cold. "I won't let her off." Troy added, "She must repent for all the sins she has committed. Killing her would just offer her freedom." Sean ruffled Olivia's head. "Even if you weren't my actual sister, she doesn't deserve to be a part of the Forom family after all the things she has done to you. I'll avenge you for sure." Olivia finished writing the prescription and passed it to Avery. "Avery, I have an idea. For now, only Deborah got exposed. Nobody has revealed that Leia is actually the one colluding with Deborah. She knows far more insider information than we do. Perhaps we can use her to catch Deborah." "Okay, I'll do as you say. Now that we're the ones in the shadows, we must make good use of our opportunity." Olivia stood with arms behind her back. There was a look of confidence on her face that didn't quite match her age. "I'll personally take revenge against her for what I had to endure. I'll repay her with 1,000-fold of the pain she inflicted on me." Chapter 1597. Ethan led Leia out of the hospital, who was miserable. She only suffered from a minor injury as she was grazed by a bullet. But from the look on her face, it was as if she had been fatally wounded. Staring into the space, she sat in the back seat without a word. She looked like she was on the verge of falling apart. Hearing the truth had brought an overwhelming impact on her. At this moment, she felt nothing but guilt and conflict. Lifting her head, she stared at Ethan in a daze. "Ethan, so this is the reason why you didn't kill me. You knew that this outcome would make me feel even worse than killing me." Leia covered her face. Tears slipped through the gaps between her fingers. "I didn't want this to happen. I just wanted to help him, but what did I do? I nearly killed his own sister. Damn it." Seeing how Leia was blaming herself for everything, Ethan sighed. "I'm not a god, nor do I possess the skill of foreseeing the future. The reason why I didn't kill you was that I was hoping you could turn over a new leaf and make amends for your past mistakes." He placed his hands on Leia's shoulders as he slowed down his voice. "Leia, we were born into an extremely unhealthy family. Because of our parents, our mental condition isn't the healthiest either. It's easy for us to do something extreme. I made many mistakes in the past too. I have to endure it no matter what kind of punishment Olivia inflicts on me. I deserve it. I'm only alive now to repent all my previous sins. A mistake is a mistake. I can't help you get out of it. But if you're too hung up on your past, why did Mr. Avery save you back then? There was finally some hope in Leia's eyes the moment she heard Avery's name. Don't let his kindness go to waste. You must stay alive and look ahead. Even though the days back then were bad, you'll still be able to see the blue sky and warm sunlight. Leia, just stay alive and live well. You're right, Ethan. I have to stay alive, only then can I repay my sins. Leia's gaze terrified Ethan. What do you want to do? Olivia has her own plans, so don't do anything to Jacqueline. This is so that we won't ruin her plan. Oh, okay. Leia nodded obediently like a puppy. I'll listen to everything you say from now on. You should get some rest for now. It'll be a brand new day tomorrow. After parting ways with Ethan, Leia stood up. She already had a plan in mind. She thought, Ethan, the first half of my life was dark. I did see some light back then, even if it was just for a short while. That ray of sunshine guided me to where I am today, so I should do something for him in return now. Leia had seen Avery undergoing treatment back on the island. After asking around, she found out that there was something wrong with Avery's kidneys. He had a serious kidney disease. Throughout the past few years, the transplant would always fail due to different reasons whenever they managed to find a matching kidney for him. He had been undergoing treatment for more than half a year. His body was much better than before. That was why his only wish now was to get a kidney transplant. Leia went to the hospital alone and had a medical checkup with a doctor. The results were out soon. Her kidney was very healthy and a perfect match to Avery's. Once the date and time of surgery were decided, Avery could get a kidney transplant. Leia signed the organ donation agreement. With a smile, she watched as the sun rose up in the sky. The sunlight shone on her once again. Mr. Avery, it's time for me to atone for my sins, she thought. Chapter 1598. The Forom family was in the throes of havoc, and Jacqueline was growing anxious. Although there was no definite evidence to prove David's identity, the Foroms were convinced that he wasn't Douglas's son. Many questions were raised regarding David's side of the family. Jacqueline and Deborah's initial plan was to make this the last generation of the Forom family. That way, they could inherit most of the family business, which was worth a lot of money. No matter how well the Foroms treated Jacqueline, she was supposed to marry someone in the end. From there, all she would gain was wedding gifts, which she would bring to the Proctor family anyway. Once she got married, she would become a man's belonging. Jacqueline didn't do it solely to avenge Deborah. The main reason was for herself. Compared to Deborah, who was blinded by love, Jacqueline was way smarter. Jacqueline knew that love was the most unreliable thing in the world. Only materials could provide her with the sense of security she needed. Deborah claimed that she was Jacqueline's mother, but Jacqueline found out the truth about her identity a long time ago. How could Deborah accept another man when she was so helplessly in love with David? In truth, Jacqueline's biological parents were a pair of couple living deep in the mountains. They wanted to strangle her to death and bury her because the family had never liked having daughters. But they couldn't bring themselves to do that, so they threw her into the mountains. She happened to be found by Deborah, who was on the run. That was when she started to form a revenge plan. After finding out about her identity, Jacqueline became more hardworking. She felt grateful to Deborah for saving her out of the mountains. Although she was never bright, she could make up for it by putting in much more effort. The Forom family possessed an abundance of resources, and Jacqueline was taught by the greatest teachers. She was able to spend her childhood peacefully. Then, worry caught up to her because she wasn't very pretty. She was afraid that someone might find out about her true identity because of her looks. Hence, she started getting fixes during her teen years, when she wasn't fully mature yet. It was fine that she didn't have a good figure. That could be overcome with regular exercise. In addition to her title as Miss Forom, her disciplined life shone through. and she became the epitome of excellence to others. She was aware that there was a big gap for her to fill in to be on par with the Fordhams. They were born talented, but it took her years to be on par with them. Jacqueline was able to come this far by putting in so much more effort than the people around her. Yet, fate fooled her right when she was one step closer to taking over the Fordham family. The anxiety was too much for her to take in that she couldn't sleep. She also received news that the headquarters were under attack. Deborah was seriously injured and taken away. She hadn't regained consciousness until now. Miss Jacqueline, you have to leave. The Fordham family is not safe anymore. It's all Begonia's fault. She betrayed us. Leia. Jacqueline wasn't the slightest bit surprised. She knew that Leia's biggest weakness was Avery. Avery must have sought help from Leia. Fortunately, Jacqueline had a backup plan. She didn't tell Leia about the murders in the Fordham family and didn't entrust the secret to Leia. All Leia knew was the grudge Jacqueline held against Olivia and not Olivia's true identity. Jacqueline was going to make her last-ditch effort before the truth came to light. She still couldn't bring herself to give up on everything when she was only one step away from it. She had to take more shares with her before leaving. I know. I'll be careful. Go into hiding and don't get caught. I'll meet you guys soon. Despite the promise, Jacqueline cut contact with them one-sidedly. Leia wasn't aware of Jacqueline's relationship with Deborah because Jacqueline always disguised herself before going to Toxic Hive. As long as Olivia's true identity wasn't revealed, Jacqueline still had a chance. Jacqueline contacted Avery. Avery, it's me. Chapter 1599. Avery was slightly taken aback. After all, Deborah was exposed and managed to escape. Why would Jacqueline not seize the chance to run away but call him instead? Olivia's guess was right. Jacqueline wasn't only evil, her ambition burned like a supernova. Jacqueline, what's wrong? Avery acted. You've been out of touch. I was so worried. Are you okay? I'm okay. I found out that Dad's not dead yet. I've been trying to save him. How is he doing? Is he safe now? Anxiety seeped into her voice. Had Avery not known the truth, he wouldn't have told her this. It was a bait to lure her out of the den. Jacqueline was one scary woman. Unlike her young age, she possessed an ambition and daringness that far exceeded that of ordinary people. Killing her would be too light of a punishment for her. Avery replied as Olivia had told him to beforehand. Jacqueline requested to meet David right away. Okay, but it's still not safe yet. Don't alarm others when you come. I'm afraid it'll lead to unexpected problems. Okay, Avery. After the call, Avery looked at others in the room. Olivia, your guess was right. She didn't run away and is planning to stay. She's been plotting this for many years. We can see how calculating she is from how she attempted to murder me. She'll never expose herself. If I hadn't sensed something wrong about Grandma's picture, we would have still been in the dark and wrapped around her finger. How despicable. Killing her would be too generous of us. Sean slammed the table and stood up. I couldn't walk and wasted those years because of her. And Quinn too. Killing Jacqueline will never be enough to appease me. Calm down, Sean. Quinn's already passed on. There's nothing we can do about it. But there's still a chance for us to turn the table before it's too late, said Olivia patiently. She continued, I can treat you and Dad. Lewis is helping Avery too. Once we can find him a suitable liver donor, he'll be able to get back on his feet. The most important thing to do now is to hold our ground and find Mom. Despite being the youngest here, she had experienced the most here, making her wiser and more decisive than others. Avery, Jacqueline is doing all this to gain our family business. Before this, she once brought up about her wish to take over Dad's job. Now, considering how she's unwilling to leave even after Deborah is exposed, she's definitely thinking of reaping big money before leaving. It'll be easy to kill her, but this won't make up for what she has done to you guys. So, you mean, she smirked. Let's make her return whatever she has taken. We'll strip her of her titles and consign her back to her origin. Jacqueline rushed to the mansion, where David was staying for recuperation. She burst into tears as soon as she entered the place. Avery, I'm so glad that you're all right. I was so worried when I couldn't contact you. Avery stared into her red-rimmed eyes. Her words sounded so genuine that she didn't seem to be faking it. He even wondered if she had gone to an acting academy for training. Otherwise, how was she able to pull off a better act than those actors out there? Avery, why are you looking at me like that? Her cheeks were wet. Only then did he come back to his senses. Nothing. I'm just glad that you're alright. He patted her shoulder as usual. Let's go see Dad. He's seriously injured. Jacqueline hummed in response. When she reached the room, she realized that Troy and Sean were there too. She was surprised that she was the last to know the news. She felt that something was odd. Did they know something? Sean, still in his wheelchair, gave her a sorrowful look. Jacqueline, you're here. Troy, Sean. She rushed to the side of David's bed, tears trickling down her cheeks. Again, Dad. Chapter 1600. David gazed at the young lady. Her eyes were red from all the crying, and her voice was trembling. She used to be the child he loved so much. Dad, I'm so glad that you're fine. You don't know how worried I was these days. Jacqueline cried next to the bed only to receive zero response. She felt weird. Dad. Troy suppressed the surging hatred in him. Jacqueline, Dad is still feeling weak. That was the calmest possible voice he could make. Get a good rest, Dad. Don't worry about anything and focus on your recovery. You've got to look after the house, she comforted. Okay, responded David succinctly. The protruding veins on the back of his hand went unnoticed by her. He was gripping the bedsheet vehemently. It took everything in him to rein himself back from killing her. The sheer thought of her past deeds stirred a storm of emotions in him. All he could do was close his eyes and repeat to himself not to give the game away. He had to tolerate it for Olivia's plan. In fact, the Foroms had been pampering Jacqueline so much all these years. She gained so much from them, and her personal assets were abundant. Yet, she was reluctant to give up when she already owned so much wealth, which any ordinary person couldn't dream of having even with centuries of hard work. Avery, I have something to speak to you, said Jacqueline. I have something to tell you as well. They left the room together. Sitting on the couch in the living room, Avery wore a serious expression. Avery, a lot of things happened to our family while you were away. He nodded. I heard it from Sean. Our relatives are bearing ill intentions toward us. Yes. Grandpa played favoritism when he was still around, and they've been holding grudges against us over it for a long time. Now that Grandpa has passed away, they're going to pounce on us. She sighed. Unfortunately, Dad is seriously injured as well. We need you to take control of the situation. Avery, I'm afraid that someone might take this chance to cause trouble to our business. Although Douglas practiced favoritism a lot, David's mother raised him well. David had never thought of inheriting the family business. David's assets were exactly Jacqueline's target. You're right. I'm worried too, but it's difficult for me to handle so many things at once when something like this has happened to our family. I'm already sick. She grabbed his hand immediately. Avery, I can help. I've been working hard these years just to help you guys. You're going to get married. Will you even have the time to handle it? My relationship with Alexander is stable, Avery. We can put off the marriage for the moment. Our family is more important. I can take over Dad's job temporarily to appease the employees. Finally, she revealed her true colors. He nodded. You have a point, but my permission isn't the problem here. Our relatives have been eyeing us for a long time. They'll never miss this chance. Those people, what does it have to do with them? I thought the company belonged to Dad. Jacqueline, there's something that you don't know. Dad used the money from Grandpa when he first built up the company. Grandpa owned 20% of the shares. There's no way for us to retrieve the shares. What do you mean?